PvZ speedrunning can be really complicated when starting out. Well, don't worry, I'm here to help you do it. A lot of people have asked me questions about this game, either in Twitch chat or in the YouTube comment section. I'm usually able to answer them as best as I can, but sometimes there are some questions that I get asked a lot. Questions about how to speedrun the game and how certain mechanics work. These types of questions were only able to be answered by word of mouth or in the PvZ speedrunning Discord. Not a lot of this stuff is found out and about in videos like this. So, with the increase in demand and a new wave of runners, I figured that it was time to change that. This is a guide that will cover everything from basic mechanics to RNG manipulation, and other tips for general speedrunning. This is a one-stop shop for most categories in PvZ, so I won't be focusing on just one in general, but I'll be trying to intermingle all of them. This information will be useful to those of you who are just getting started, and it should help clear some things up. Hi, my name is Sasquatch, I'm a PvZ speedrunner, and let's get started with this beginner's guide to PvZ speedrunning. I want to make something very clear. You are not alone. There's an entire community of speedrunners waiting to help you out and waiting to help you improve. Whether it's showing you something, giving advice, answering questions, or making an analysis video, only to beat me a few months later, there are runners that are eager and willing to help you on your journey. The PvZ Speedrunning Discord will be linked in the description of this video, so if you find yourself still scratching your head after this video is over with, head on over there and ask questions. Alternatively, you can also ask your questions in the comment section and I will do my best to answer. Either way, don't go alone in this dangerous world of brain eaters, my friend. With that out of the way, let's jump into the mechanics. Mechanics are the very fundamentals of the game, and this will be including anything that doesn't change at all. These are things that you as the player control, and you'll always be able to control these things, just like planting plants down and clicking on sun. There are a few mechanics that overlap with RNG manipulation, but don't worry, I'll make sure to cover everything in as much detail as possible. If you've seen any of my videos, especially my tier list ones, you might notice me using the term 50% rule a lot. Well, that's because for the traditional gameplay of PvZ, this mechanic is the only reason why the speedrun exists at all. That being said, if you're planning on trying puzzles runs, the 50% rule won't apply. For everyone else though, this is the most important mechanic in PvZ speedrunning. The 50% rule is simply this. Once a wave's hit points have been defeated to 50% of the total hit points, the next wave of zombies will spawn. For an even simpler description, just kill the zombies faster. This is the most important thing when it comes to PvZ speedrunning, and it determines how long you will spend in every run. As a quick and easy example, take this scenario in Survival Day Normal. If you have two normal zombies and you squash one of them, you can progress the level without having to kill the other zombie. This is what allows us to make the game go faster, but there are a couple of specifications that I have to make. First, I have to specify hit points. The reason why I have to specify this is because if I don't, then some people might be trying to kill 50% of the zombies rather than 50% of the hit points. This means that hit points are way more important than actual zombie count. So when it comes to killing a buckethead versus killing two normal zombies, you nearly always want to kill the buckethead. Second, the number isn't always 50%. In fact, most of the time it isn't. It can be anywhere between 35 and 50% of the wave's health, and this number is randomly generated every time a wave spawns. The only reason we use 50% is because it always guarantees that we get the rule every time. Since it's the maximum value, we guarantee that we'll get it whenever we fulfill 50%. There will be a few times that you're going to be gambling on whether or not you get the rule though. An easy example of this is in the level 4-3 in any percent. In this level, the balloon zombie has ever so slightly more health than the basic zombie, and this is because the balloon actually counts as a tiny bit of health. In this case, you're going to be gambling on the fact that killing the normal zombie will be enough to satisfy the rule. This won't always be the case. If you get unlucky, you lose about 10 seconds of time, because now you have to wait for the balloon to die to the mower. This is very unlikely to happen, but it does happen, and that's just something that speedrunners have to keep in mind. Gambling for 50% rules doesn't always work, but you're doing it less often anyway. Gambling for 50% rules happens less often because usually if you can guarantee you get 50% of the health of a wave, you should. This is the most basic and the most important mechanic of PvZ speedrunning. Now that we've got this out of the way, let's jump into something a bit more complicated. Next up is completely opposite of what you might expect. Mowers in PvZ serve as a sort of last line of defense, a second chance, a saving grace if you mess up or get overwhelmed. In speedruns though, they aren't really any of these things. We use our lawnmowers generously. In fact, we use a lawnmower at the beginning of every day level. Well, outside of 1-1 and sometimes 1-2. Everywhere else though, if we can send a zombie to the mower, we will do so at the earliest convenience. This does a few things for us. First, it allows us to buy time in order to get up a ton of sunflowers. Speedrunners plant a lot of sunflowers, and this is because we need a lot of sun for things like chompers, repeaters, and other expensive plants. Second, lawnmowers give us an opportunity for something that's called a mower kill. This is pretty self-explanatory. The lawnmower kills a zombie. Usually, it's a zombie that comes later in the level in the same row as a zombie that you let go earlier. It also means that mower kills can make levels a lot faster if they are timed perfectly with the zombie wave spawning. This also means that you'll be getting value out of letting your mower go. And finally, when that lawnmower does eventually go off, you'll have something called lawnmower manipulation. This is a type of RNG manipulation that prevents zombies from spawning in lanes that recently used a mower. This mower manip lasts for 2 waves, and in those 2 waves there won't be any zombies spawning where that lawnmower went off. This manip helps us compress zombies where we want them to go, and we can use something called double mower manip in some early any percent levels to get the zombies to line up in a really nice cherry bomb. I'll talk more about RNG manipulation later on in this video, but in general, make sure you're using at least 1 mower at the start of any daytime level. This will make things go more consistent and faster in the long run. In general, get used to using lawnmowers because there is skill in these decisions. What mower to let go of and when to let it go. With the idea of mowers instantly killing zombies, let's move on to instants. In terms of how much control you have in the game, it's actually a lot more than you realize. There are nearly always solutions to everything the game has to offer. You might not know all of them, but they are there. Instants are one of these solutions. In case it isn't obvious, instants are the fastest thing in the game. Instantly killing zombies is faster than slowly killing them, and being able to remove any potential annoyance from the game is very powerful. Make sure you use them. This isn't your casual playthrough anymore. You don't have to hold onto the squash for the entire level. You can use the cherry bomb, and Chomper is actually good. There are so many different instants in the game that you should be able to cycle through them and use them multiple times per level, including the ones with long cooldowns. Instants are how we go fast in this game, so utilizing them is crucial. However, and I cannot emphasize this enough, do not use too many too early. The early game is for building up. Using a few cheap instants, planting as many sunflowers as possible, and getting a few firepower plants down to prepare for the final wave, or for the rest of the level given it's more than 1 flag. This balance changes from level to level, and it's different for most levels. Sometimes this balance can be hard to find, so don't worry if you fail your first time, or your second time, or even your 12th time. It'll come to eventually, but there is a certain balance in how much sun you plant down and how many instants you use. Using instants costs sun, and if you don't have the sun to back up how much sun you're spending, you will fall apart. Making sure that you use the time in the early game wisely is just as important as unleashing all of the instants that you can in the later game. On top of this, you also have to manage all of the cooldowns in the right way so that you aren't lacking anything when you need it. A prime example of this is during the final wave. If you use Squash on wave 9, you likely won't have it for that wave. The same thing goes for the Cherry Bomb. Please, please, please do not use your Cherry Bomb right before the final wave. There are some very niche cases where this is a good thing, but for most levels that are longer than 1 flag, it is always better to save it until the end. There is a lot here, but the key is to practice. Practicing what you struggle with will make you a better player almost instantly. A combination of practice and asking for help will improve your times by a lot. Sure, you won't be able to find these balances instantly, but you're not supposed to be able to. These levels are hard when you're trying to speedrun them. Surprisingly, the game becomes a lot more difficult when you're trying to go fast. But with enough practice and enough experience, you can make these levels fast. And the learning here can be on a case-by-case basis, which means that whatever works for you might not work for someone else, and vice versa. Find the way that you like to play and adopt that playstyle into your runs. Using these instants effectively will come to you with time and practice. And again, don't be afraid to ask for help or ask for someone to analyze what you did wrong. Because believe me, you did something wrong. And that's okay. Making mistakes is how we all improve, so don't be afraid of making them. And that concludes the number of mechanics that I have for you guys as beginners. There are more, but I won't get into them because they're a little bit out of the scope of this video. For now, I want to move on to something a little bit more unpleasant to talk about. So let's talk about the RNG. If you've played any amount of video games, there is almost always a factor of randomness in the form of random number generation, or RNG. PvZ is no different. In fact, it leans a bit harder into it. A very large amount of this game is RNG, but there are a few very important things to know about it. Every run is going to be different than the last one, and you just have to adapt and react to the RNG that you're given. That's part of why this run is so unique. So let's first talk about the RNG that you have some control over with manipulation. As I said earlier, mowers are an easy example of RNG manipulation, called mower manip. This is where a row in which a mower just went off has no spawns for 2 waves. Not only can you get the mower kill, but you also get the manip. RNG manip is important, and there is one other manip that you're going to be using just as often as mower manip. This is called conveyor belt manipulation, or conveyor manip, or belt manip, or yeah, you get the idea. There's a lot of names. Conveyor belt manipulation is when you hold 3 or more of a plant on a conveyor belt level. When you do this and you are holding 3 or more of that plant, makes you less likely to receive the plant that you're holding 3 or more of, as long as you're holding 3 or more of it. That means that all those times that you were saving cherry bombs when you really needed them on levels like 110 and 5.5, you were actually preventing yourself from getting more of them. In speedrunning, we try to make it as likely as possible to get the fastest plants. Or, alternatively, we try to make it as unlikely as possible to get the slowest plants. We don't want walnuts in 110, so instead of using them, we hold on to them on the belt to hopefully get more damage plants and instants. We don't want ice shroom in 210, so we hold them, hopefully, to get other plants that we can use. If you don't want the plant, then just hold on to it, and you'll get less of that plant when you reach that golden threshold of 3 or more. Wow, this is super cool. I could probably just manip 3 plants then, because I can hold 10 seeds on my belt. Now, this is where things get a little bit weird. The way that the conveyor belt works is actually pretty strange. If you keep too many plants on the belt, it'll actually slow down, similar to PvZ 2. I wonder where they got that mechanic from. The conveyor belt being too full means that you will get less plants per minute as you would if your conveyor belt was empty. So keeping your conveyor belt empty is just as important as manipulating the plants that you don't want. After all, you don't want to be just 1 plant short of beating a level and then have to wait for the final plant for an extra 5 or 10 seconds. The sweet spot tends to be manipulating only 1 plant in each level. There are more things to consider when it comes to conveyors, but these are the 2 basic fundamentals of conveyor stages: conveyor belt manipulation, and not holding too many things on your belts. As for RNG manipulation, mower manip and belt manip are the 2 most important manip factors that you'll have at your disposal. So let's talk about the worst kind of RNG. And this is the RNG that you can't control. There is a lot of RNG in this game that you cannot control. Let's just take 1-1 as a prime example. This level is basically all RNG. There's sun RNG, there's zombie speed, there's zombie exposition, there's P-shooter global cycles, and then there's the number that the 50% rule chooses to be. That is a lot, and it's probably overwhelming. But don't worry, not a lot of that stuff is actually super useful. Since you can't control it, there's not much reason to worry about it. In fact, there are only a couple of factors in RNG that you need to super worry about as a beginner. One of them is where the zombies spawn, and the other is specific to categories that require money, and that is money pace. Okay, so I lied a little bit in the title of this section. The first one is actually not true RNG. Where the zombie spawns is what you would call weighted RNG. This means that if a specific event happens multiple times in a row, it is less likely to happen every consecutive time. In a less nerdy explanation, if a zombie spawns in a row, it's less likely to go in that row again. The only exception is the first spawn. That makes no difference. The chance, or weight, of that row's spawn odds are decreased, while the other rows are increased. This is what allows for things like prediction strats and mower kills to be possible in the first place. But now we get into the true RNG. Money is true RNG, but this is only an issue in a couple of categories. Any percent, one of the most popular categories, is where it's infamous in, and it's very important for that run too. If you aren't running any percent, then you can ignore this part of the video, but if you are planning to do it at some points, I'd still highly recommend coming back to it. Money comes in 3 forms in PvZ, as you probably know. There are silver coins, which are worth 10, gold coins, which are worth 50, and then there's diamonds, which are worth 1,000. Diamonds are obviously what you want the most whenever it comes to money pace, but you can actually survive money pace without one. In any case, it's unlikely that you'll get a diamond anyway, since the drop odds for a diamond are about 1 in 1,000 for every coin drop. That is not 1 in 1,000 for every zombie, that is 1 in 1,000 for every zombie that drops a coin. There are a couple of variables as to whether or not a zombie will drop a coin, but that again is outside of the scope of this video, and I don't want to get into waypoints, so don't worry about that. All you need to know is that when it comes to money, it's the most important thing that you can't control. For other categories that don't involve money, this obviously isn't important, but it's still something to take note of. For any percent, getting at least 1 diamond is what makes it most comfortable. You can technically survive without a diamond, but it's a little bit harder and slower, so getting a diamond is obviously optimal. But again, you can't control whether or not you get a diamond, so you just kinda have to hope that you get one. There's not much you can do about the game not giving you diamonds, so. And sometimes you can go a really long time without seeing one. Crippling economic states behind, we can probably stop here when it comes to RNG for beginners. A lot of other RNG requires us to go a bit deeper into the way that the game works, and as it stands now, wave points are just a little bit too complicated to explain really well in a video that's already this length, especially since there's one more thing that I really need to talk about, and it's a common problem throughout most PvZ speedrunners. And this is where I'll leave my guide. I want to talk about the mental game of speedrunning PvZ. Burnout is rough, so there are a few things to take into consideration whenever you're running PvZ. Your mentality has to be just as strong as your execution, if not stronger, and you have to be able to know what to do in certain situations. This includes when you're frustrated by what the game gives you, or if you're under PB pressure going into the final levels of a run. So first I want to talk about resets. For beginners, I almost never recommend resetting. This is because a run can easily look dead, but might not be. I always encourage beginners to not reset their first several runs when getting started, and to not reset based on emotions either. Emotion resetting is something that I'm sure every speedrunner in general is guilty of, but try not to let your emotions get the best of you when you're running. In fact, try not to reset runs at all until you know they're dead. Even if you think a run is dead, try to keep it for a little bit longer. You will find that sometimes your time save ended up being later in your run, or you made a big mistake in a level that you forgot about. You'll be surprised by how many runs come out of this alive just by not resetting. Let's talk burnout. If you're too frustrated, take a break and try again later. Day-long or even week-long breaks are recommended and can refresh you for more runs. Burning out by repeatedly playing the same thing over and over can feel absolutely terrible, so I also recommend changing up your category every once in a while. The RNG can also feel like it's constantly against you, and that is very demotivating. There will be times where you just lose a run to purely RNG, things outside of your control. That never feels good. But try to come to terms with the fact that you have to make the best out of your RNG, rather than fighting against it. This goes for your mistakes, too. There will be times where you mess up one small thing and lose the run when you're this close to a PB. It happens to the best of us. Just try not to let it keep you from coming back. You just have to make the best out of your mistakes and find opportunities to come back from making them. If you feel like you're banging your head against a wall getting nowhere, try to figure out what's going on. Is it a mistake, or is RNG just constantly bad? Hey, for beginners, it's more likely that you're making a mistake. Don't worry though, that's pretty normal. As long as you don't give up and learn from your mistakes, and have fun learning, then this game will be perfect for you. Learning the run is a ton of fun, and watching the progress you make along the way is super satisfying. And now we get to improving. If you want to improve in the long run, watching your runs back is essential, and so is watching other runners too. In fact, that is considered practice in my opinion. Watch a live runner, or watch runs from the leaderboards and see what other runners do. Evaluate what your decisions would be and compare them to the decisions that these runners made. I have to clarify though, compare the decisions you made, not your times. While decisions do make a better time, I don't really want you to be comparing yourself to top level runners. You won't be able to compare to top 10, top 20 runners when you're just starting out. So don't compare to their times, just compare to your PB. Evaluate throughout the run, pause and make decisions of your own, and it should become more clear which decisions that you are making are mistakes, and it'll help you capitalize on whenever you're making correct decisions. Watch your own runs back and consider your choices based on the spawns that you got. Remember, RNG is a big factor in this, so don't beat yourself up over something you can't control. And if all else fails, go in the Speedrun Discord and ask for help. If you're confused about anything, or don't know how something works, or just in general want to know what you're doing wrong, the Speedrun Discord is a great place to do that. And runners in the Speedrun Discord are always happy to help. That's about everything I want to say about mentality. Just keep in mind, this game can be pretty chaotic. So all you can do is what you can do. Sometimes you won't make the right decisions, and that's okay. Reacting to those mistakes and reacting to the RNG that you get is what'll help you improve in the future. PvZ speedrunning can be convoluted to try and get into, but I hope this guide can help you see what's ahead for you in this speedrunning journey. Have I mentioned the Speedrunning Discord enough yet? You should join it just in case you still have questions after this video. On top of that, if you're looking for more specific guides and resources for categories, that is a great place to be. This current guide is just one that I wanted to make for general PvZ beginners, and to help some people get into the game by speedrunning their first run. If you have any questions, you can also leave them down in the comments and I will answer them as quickly as possible. If you want me to analyze your run, let me know as well. I did this with Moo a while back, and I'd love to do it more. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Press the like button if it helped you out, and subscribe for more content like this. Happy speedrunning, and have a freaking awesome day.